Alright, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Canon EOS R6, which is going to be this bad boy right here. I've had this camera now for right around 2 months, give or take. Basically the day that it was released or announced, I pre-ordered it, and the official day of shipping release, that's whenever I received mine. So I've had it about that long. Like I said, I think it's about 2 months close to it. Anyways, I've put it through a lot of different tests when it comes to photos and videos. In a couple of brand shoots that I did, I was doing both. I was switching between photos and videos the entire session. And you're talking, there was one day whenever I shot for probably around 4 hours in the morning and then 2 hours in the evening. I'm gonna give you a little bit of backstory about myself. My name is John Dickerson. I am a photographer and videographer here in Texas. I produce content mainly for couples, families, and such like that, but I've also started dipping into brand content for businesses here around town, local businesses that just are looking to grow their brands. That's where I've gotten into brand shoots, and I've helped them produce some content for their pages, Facebook and Instagram. And that's kind of like why I was initially prompted to order this camera in the first place. Because originally, just like I am right now, I film with the Canon EOS RP, and I also have another Canon EOS RP that I use for photos, and I still use for photos. This right here is the RP, and I have it paired with the Canon EF 70-200, and this is the version 2, and it's a 2.8. Still use that setup, just however I like to use my Canon EOS R6 now, paired with the 24-70, which I'm currently filming with right now as well. So I'm going to start off by talking about photos, and in the second half I'll talk about videos, and I'll kind of give you my initial thoughts when we're all done. For photos, I think when you're taking a step up from a DSLR, a lower end DSLR, I would say below the 5D Mark IV, or even a lower end mirrorless camera such as the Canon EOS RP, I don't think you can go wrong with this camera. I don't think there is a negative to look at, especially when talking about photos. The lower megapixel count on this camera versus even the Canon EOS RP, I don't see it as a big deal because I can take the same images and I can still process the same image and it still look crystal clear. That's the only difference I think that this camera has over that camera. I think it just processes the image a little bit differently, but in terms to sharpness and clarity, I think both cameras produce a solid image. I've actually used the photos that I've taken off of the Canon EOS R6, and I've taken them into canvas shops, and they've put them on extremely huge canvases. Would say maybe probably about 4 foot by 3 foot. And you're talking the images still come out crystal clear. Talking an extreme amount of autofocus points in this camera. You have 2 SD cards, so you can shoot to both SD cards, especially if you're doing weddings. There's so many features that's in this camera when it comes to photos. I really don't think it's a bad camera at all, especially if you're looking to upgrade. On the back of the camera, you're gonna have, of course, your LCD screen articulating. For some people that's a big deal. For me, especially with doing photos, I don't use it as much. I've come to use the EVF even more. You have your knob right here, or your thumbstick, whatever you want to call it. Basically you can move your autofocus points just by turning that. Of course you have your dial, your menu dial right here. I'm glad they brought this back because I didn't like the D-pad that they were using. I'd much rather scroll than I would rather press. Of course, up top, you're going to have manual functions. You'll have on the other side your menu, and again, Canon's menus are extremely simple. They added, I think, 2 tabs versus the RP, but they made it even easier to navigate through. When it comes to photos, again, I don't think you can go wrong choosing this camera. No matter what kind of shooting you're doing, I think you're really going to enjoy it. The low light capability of it makes it extremely compatible whenever you're shooting in low light. I've actually done a couple of gym shoots where I just had the can lights that they used in the ceilings, and I was able to push this camera right around 3200 to 6400 ISO, and once I got it into Lightroom, there was minimal noise, and so all I did was just pull up on that noise reduction, and it just went away. So again, low light capabilities, it's an extremely solid performing camera. But what you probably want to know is more of the video side of things. I'm not going to run off these specs. Just know that if you want to spec video, I'll leave one linked either up here or down in the description. That way you can check out. But let's get into this right here. When it comes to video, I'm hand holding this 90% of the time simply because it does have image stabilization. And so I find myself wanting to shoot in 120 frames a second a lot more frequently than what I used to. I haven't had an issue with overheating yet. And that's, again, taking it from photos to videos, back to photos, back to videos, back to photos, back to videos. I still haven't ran across an issue where I even was warned about overheating. I will say this though, I did find myself touching this part right here, and the screen was like this. And I just put my finger right here on the bottom of the camera. That was extremely hot during one of my shoots. However, again, I was never warned on the LCD. So I'm gonna assume the camera wasn't even near overheating if I wasn't even warned. When it comes to image stabilization, I actually think it performs extremely well. A lot of the reviews were showing that firmware 1, firmware 1, which is what it shipped with, the image stabilization was wobbly on the sides. I film with a 24-70 2.8 lens. This is a RF version, and I never saw or had that issue. However, 15-35 is apparently the lens that was having that issue the most. So I've updated recently, and just to be on the safe side, and like I said, I still haven't had an issue with either overheating or image stabilization. Another thing that this camera has is CLog. It films in IPB, which to me isn't a big deal. I still love the image that comes out of it. CLog is a little bit tougher to color grade for me because I'm not used to it. But I'm so happy to finally have that inside of this camera. That way I can start progressing my creative skills and color grading and such like that. It's just packed with so many features that you're probably not going to be used to, especially whenever you're using maybe a Canon EOS RP or anything on the bottom end of the DSLR line. I will say, whenever you're holding this camera, if you've ever owned a Canon 80D, this feels like an 80D. The second I took it out of the box and I put it in my hands, it felt like an 80D. So me personally, I was glad it felt like that because I loved my 80D, and I just love the feel and the size, especially once you pair it to a little bit of a heavier lens, such as my 24-70. One of the downsides that these cameras have, and this is going to be all of them right now if I'm not mistaken, is the fact that they're extremely limited to what they can do with third-party lenses attached. I have the Sigma 18-35, and whenever I attach this lens to this camera, or even my Canon EOS RP, I have limitations to what I can record, or the modes that I can use. Such as if I was to slap it on this, sure, I get the recording frame rates that I would want, such as 24, 30, or 60, but whenever I take it and I want to use 120, I cannot use 120 with this lens, which is a huge downside for me because I love this lens, especially for video, but I'm just not able to use it in the system that I want to use it. I want to be able to go from 24 right to 60, right to 120, maybe back down to 24. But if I was to use this lens, I would be held to 24 and 60. That's kind of a waste whenever this camera can do 120, and I prefer to leave it like that. Okay guys, so that's enough of me talking and mumbling on about the Canon EOS R6. Here's my final thoughts on it. Take it with a grain of salt, however you want to take it. But again, I've told you about myself, how I use the camera. I've never had a problem with it yet. I don't suspect you would too, unless you're trying to basically overperform what this camera can do. If you're a basic YouTuber, or if you are a basic photographer or videographer, you will never have a problem using this camera, especially if you're trying to record in 1080, which to my knowledge most people do. I'm not sure where the line came to where even though 4K is compatible, everyone uses 4K. I'm not sure where that came from, but everyone that I know that does videos, even wedding videos, is still shooting in 1080. I feel like that is still the industry standard. However, 4K and 8K might sound good. Chances are, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be recording in it, especially if you're not making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars doing this. But I'm going to agree with everything everyone has said about this camera. It is a photography camera first. It's a video camera second. Keep that in mind, and you shouldn't have anything negative to say about it, especially whenever you receive yours. That's gonna be all for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you learned something about this camera. To be honest, I don't regret buying this camera at all. Canon EOS R6 has been probably the best buy that I've done, especially related to cameras. I'm loving it. I'm still loving it. I've used it a ton, and I don't plan on upgrading or switching anytime soon. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section down below. As always, guys, I'm gonna see you in the next one. Later.